The SpongeBob SquarePants Movie was released in October 2004. It quickly became the best-selling SpongeBob game for a long time due to it being tied to the actual movie, which released 3 weeks later. This game is quite different from the movie though, and I'm not talking about those PowerPoint cutscenes. This game has multiple types of gameplay styles: platforming, sliding, and driving. People generally prefer the platforming sections, while the driving and sliding levels have received more criticism over the years, especially Sandwich Driving 101, the first driving level in the game. As you'd expect from a tutorial level, there's not a lot going on. Out of all of the sliding and driving levels in the speedrun, this was by far the most boring, especially when the old Any% route had us play the level 4 times. It was so bad that some people would name the sandwich driving split something like Suffering. This level remained intact from the day the game released all the way to 2020. The game started being ran in 2013, but the route hasn't changed much from then to 2020, so instead I'll go over the optimal route at that point in time. Driving levels separate themselves from sliding levels with very different steering mechanics and nitros. Nitros are used for quick speed boosts and are best used just after losing speed because it almost instantly maxes your speed, or for shortcuts that require you to drive through off-road sections. The nitro route is pretty basic here. Store 2 nitros to cut through the park, nitro a few times just after a water fountain to get around ramps because ramps are generally best avoided if possible, nitro through this water fountain and hope you get a good wrecking ball cycle because driving through the right side is faster than the left side, and so on. That's the bulk of the level in a nutshell. High-level runners easily save seconds over other players because the driving takes a while to get good at, but anybody could easily copy this nitro route. The individual level world record on Xbox was a 2:30. This is how the level was played for years, but that ended in 2020. Sandwich Driving 101 went from being simple and solved for years to becoming one of the hardest levels in the entire game, and it all started thanks to ToxicPinHead. Who is he? Turns out he's a pretty good strat hunter from a pretty bad country. He found vertical momentum storage, the very first version of Mindy Skip, a trick that saves almost 20 minutes today, and quite a few miscellaneous strats. But what ToxicPinHead discovered on May 10th, 2020 was this. This was a huge deal because nothing like this existed in the other driving levels. The problem with doing out-of-bounds skips is that the game keeps a close eye on the checkpoints. Every driving level contains invisible checkpoints. If you skip even one checkpoint, the trigger at the finish line won't spawn. So this trick's a bust, right? This cuts off way too much of the track. It wouldn't even work. No checkpoints were skipped. ToxicPinHead drove through the checkpoint during the out-of-bounds section. He drove pretty far out to touch the checkpoint, so it was unknown if this saved time. So what did this trick mean for the speedrunning community? As it turns out, nothing. At least not yet. It's jarring to look back at the messages in the speedrunning server, but we all just forgot about the trick. How long did it take for this to get brought back up? 10 months. Better late than never, I guess. The first thing we realized when revisiting this trick is that you don't need to drive as far out as ToxicPinHead did. Using the Industrial Park level editor, we can see that the required checkpoint is right here. From this, we knew for sure that the trick saved time. Every version of the game has different driving speeds for the paddy wagon. NTSC Original Xbox is the fastest version for most categories, but that's where the problem lies. GameCube is the fastest driving, and the only way people were able to replicate this trick was with the PAL GameCube version. The European version, aka the PAL version, makes the paddy wagon even slower, but slower driving speeds give you more height when jumping off ramps. This small dirt pile is pretty much a ramp, and PAL GameCube gets more height off ramps than NTSC Original Xbox. It may look like ToxicPinHead easily made it out of bounds, but in reality, he barely made it above an invisible wall. PAL Xbox could be used in runs instead, but then the trick would barely save time, so it wasn't worth it. Even then, the trick would still be really hard. What we really needed was for it to be viable on NTSC Xbox. The most popular category in this game is no pause storage, and you have 2 opportunities to attempt this trick since you enter the level twice. On NTSC Xbox, it was possible to save roughly 28 seconds in no pause storage. It took a few days, but someone was finally able to get over the invisible wall on NTSC Xbox. This person wasn't a runner of the game, but they were interested enough in the trick to attempt it. His name is Unbones. While no video proof exists, he claims to have managed to get above above the wall, but the lap didn't count. Only 8 days later, he managed to pull off the trick in its entirety. This was huge. At a world record level, many categories were getting to the point where it was pretty difficult to save over 10 seconds in some cases. So to think that we could save 28 seconds just from doing a trick twice was insane. But there was still one problem. This trick was not RTA viable. This trick is way too hard for full category speedruns. Even in IL attempts, it hardly ever worked. I asked an anonymous runner how often they'd get the trick on an average day. The answer was around 1 in 30. This is incredibly inconsistent. Imagine having to play through the entire level perfectly, cutting every corner as much as possible, ensuring every nitro is used to its full effect, taking very clean lines, and then doing a 1 in 30 trick around a minute and a half into the level. 1 in 30 are the odds of getting it on PAL GameCube, so on Xbox your chances would be far worse. In the average category, you can't attempt this trick until about 5 minutes in, and that's after getting past the first 2 segments, No Cheese and I'm Ready Depression, both of which are very reset heavy. It wouldn't be a stretch to assume that the odds of you saving as much time as possible on NTSC Xbox in the middle of a run would be worse than 1 in 100. And that's if you know the trick inside and out and you only attempt it once. The absolute earliest you can attempt it a second time in no pause storage is 9 minutes in. So if doing it once was unreasonable in runs, doing it twice was out of the question. This was extremely disappointing for the community. Sandwich driving had the chance to stand out from the other levels. It had a chance to be very skillful, and on the IL leaderboards that was the case. But not being able to do this in full game speedruns was such a shame. But little did we know, hope was on the horizon. What you just witnessed is a setup that Unbones discovered on April 30th, 2021. The importance of this trick being discovered cannot be understated. While this trick wasn't easy, it went from being a 1 in 100 to around a 1 in 5 to get it quickly on a good day. Don't get me wrong, this was still inconsistent, but it's actually somewhat realistic to save time in a run now. Probably slow is in the title because reversing on the fence takes time. Plus he used the nitro to land in the area where you grab the checkpoint. But on May 9th, the aforementioned anonymous runner found a way for it to save much more. Instead of touching the checkpoint out of bounds, you could simply touch the checkpoint while in bounds, turn around, and then attempt the new setup. This saves 11 seconds each attempt if done perfectly. And the best part? NTSC Xbox can reasonably do this trick. This didn't mean anything for IL runners because the older setup saves more time, but for full game runs, this was massive. Despite everything I've said, this trick is still frustratingly inconsistent. It's hard to hit the right part of the dirt pile with the exact angle and speed you're looking for. You want enough height to land on the fence, but not too much. The paddy wagon must be at a very strange angle for this to work. Attempting it with a flatter angle results in falling into this little pit or being pushed back in bounds. If the former is the case, you can recover it, but you're losing a lot of time. Finally, the invisible walls on the platform you land on are huge, and a bad angle could easily result in time loss or losing your run outright by being pushed back in bounds. At its worst, this setup is a nightmare that prevents you from ever getting runs going. Oh my god, man. I love this trick. I love this game. I love that I never get to see past the 3rd fucking level in the game. I love that it sometimes takes over an hour to get past sandwich driving. I just love it so much. I have to see it again and again and again and again. But at its best, it's an incredibly cool and unique trick that defined the level. At this point, multiple setups have been found, and we're lucky enough to have an RTA viable method for this trick. But it turns out this game had one more setup for us. What you're about to see is the Bulldozer Setup. Forget all the other setups, this one is the real deal. We tried making this work before and failed, but we managed to finally make it consistent in June. We use the yellow lines on the ground as a visual cue and do a hard right steer in mid-air. You have a decent amount of leniency while driving into the dirt pile, as well as landing out of bounds. After months of doing this trick, I'm able to get it around 75% of the time in runs, or roughly coin flip odds to get it twice. The only issues with this trick are hitting the invisible wall if you try to cut the gap too much, which is easily avoidable, and the fact that missing this loses more time than messing up every other previous setup, enough to warrant a reset. It's also annoying to practice since you need nitros for it, but all these flaws are easily ignorable after remembering how bad the fence setup was. It was only a good and consistent setup when compared to prior setups, but the bulldozer method is significantly better. What's amazing is that while the fence method saved 11 seconds, the bulldozer method saves 12. We finally have a good setup for this trick, and I love performing it in runs. It's not extremely consistent, but it's good enough, and it looks awesome too. I don't think we'll ever find a better setup than this, and honestly, I'm okay with that. This trick is enough to achieve a 217 on Xbox, which is crazy, but we can't forget the original setup for GameCube. The world record for sandwich driving before the discovery of sandwich out of bounds was a 226, and the current world record is a 208? Wait, that's an 18-second improvement. Didn't the trick save like 12? What the hell could have possibly changed by then? It took 7 years for someone to find an out-of-bounds trick in this level, but it only took 1 year for the second one to be found. This was the first driving level to receive an out-of-bounds trick, but now it has 2. Park out-of-bounds, discovered by Vaz in June 2021, is way too difficult for Xbox, so it's just an IL exclusive trick for the time being. When using a nitro against the wall, you don't get as much height as you do on PAL GameCube. Only time will tell if Park out-of-bounds will ever get the sandwich out-of-bounds treatment. If so, that'll be another 6 seconds shaved off, making for a combined theoretical total of the following time saves. 18 seconds in all extras, Frogfish RTA and early powers, 36 seconds in early task unlocks and no pause storage, 45 seconds in 100%, and 54 seconds in no Mindy Skip and all tokens. As for ILs, if these tricks are done on NTSC GameCube instead of PAL, which as far as we know is impossible, then a 205 could be achieved. It may not be the coolest, most broken level of all time, it may not be something that all runners will attempt in their runs, it may not change the way some people view the game as a whole, but one thing's for certain, this level will never be the same again. And at least for now, Sandwich Driving 101 has been driven to perfection. Thank you for watching.